Good evening, Tokyo, and good morning, Brazil. Bom dia, Japão, Brasil, e boa noite, Japão. Tonight's live is in English. Usually, Renato Brandão live is in Portuguese, but we have a very international, very special guest tonight, the great Brazilian pianist, André MEHMARI. And because his following here in Japan is huge, he has so many Japanese fans, I thought it would be more inclusive to do it in English so that we could also have people who don't speak Portuguese watching and listening to this great pianist. Para quem está acostumado a ouvir o Renato Brandão em português, vou avisar que a live de hoje vai ser híbrida, a gente vai fazer em inglês também, porque o nosso convidado de hoje, André MEHMARI, é um grande pianista, muito conhecido aqui no Japão, entre os japoneses, inclusive entre muitos japoneses que não falam português. A gente fez uma pequena pesquisa, descobriu que muitos japoneses e outros estrangeiros também queriam que a live fosse em inglês, por isso a gente vai fazer essa coisa híbrida. Gostaria também, antes de passar para o inglês, dizer que a gente está fazendo essa live com o patrocínio da Outsourcing, que é uma empreiteira aqui do Japão, que está trabalhando com o mercado de brasileiros também. Então, se você é brasileiro e gostaria de mudar de profissão, procurar novos horizontes profissionais, entre em contato com o pessoal do Japão aqui e a gente pode dar mais detalhes sobre essa empreiteira. Well, so back to English, and I would like to say to everybody that Renato Brandão Live is every Saturday at 9 p.m. in Tokyo. That means 9 a.m. in Brazil, and 1 p.m., so 1 in the afternoon in Lisbon and in London, and 2 p.m. in the rest of Europe. I'm saying these places because we have so many Brazilians and other nationalities who watch our live in those places. And please, when you come in, good evening, Stephen. When you come in, just say hello and say where you are. I know some of you already, and let me know where you're watching from, because that's very important for us. And also feel free to ask André and myself any questions during the live. That will make it a lot more lively and dynamic. So I hope you can contribute with your questions, and I'm sure that André will be very happy to hear your questions. So let's call him. He's already waiting for us in his studio in Mairiporã, near São Paulo in Brazil. And here is André MEHMARI for you.
Hello. Hi,
good
everyone.
Morning, André.
Good morning, good night, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here, Renato. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a real honor for us to have you as well. And I want to tell you something very interesting to start with, which is, I actually found out about you from a Japanese friend. And, I have a Japanese friend who loves your work. And he said, oh, André MEHMARI is coming to Brazil, to Tokyo. Let's go and watch his show. And I said, okay. But I didn't really know your work. And I went to this concert. I was absolutely impressed. And I found, so everything about you is so interesting, because the first thing that I find really, really interesting is that you can't really define your music as one particular genre. You really is a master in doing this fusion between classical music and popular music, which is also a Brazilian tradition and also a bit of jazz. But more than everything, I think what is impressive and everybody comments and loves about you is your ability to compose and to improvise as you are playing. This is really a talent. I remember during the show, you asked the audience to mention some melodies, and I think I mentioned Tico Tico no Fubá because I know you love that repertoire of Zequinha de Abreu and Brazilian, which is what my grandmother, who was a pianist, used to love as well. Yeah, so to me, your sound is very, very familiar, very close to my heart. And
Thank
then,
you.
Yes, well, it's wonderful. And then other people mentioned other songs, and then for about 15 minutes you played and you mixed all those melodies, and I was, how can you do that? That was so impressive. So tell us about your career, just to start with. How was your training? I imagine you started as a classic pianist training, or not. How was it?
Yeah, not really. I have a very different background. I didn't have the very typical classical pianist upbringing, and then went to jazz or improvisation. I kind of did everything at the same time, improvising and playing popular music and playing wedding balls, for example, when I was 11. So yeah, I was studying classical music also in my teenager, as a teenager, but always with the great Brazilian songbook tradition in in my home. My mother is my biggest influence. You know, she plays the piano, she sings, she plays the guitar, the accordion, and so I had a very musical childhood back in Ribeirão Preto, countryside of São Paulo, and I had my mother playing all kinds of music at the same piano. So she used to play like Chopin and Jobim at the same piano, and so for me, music was
Just like
always,
you. So that was, where you
yeah.
got it from. Yes.
I had this very strong example coming from my mom. You know that she's
Mhm.
playing all kinds of music with the same heart in the same
Yes.
piano, and so for me, this is what I do today, so
Yes.
to speak, in my own way, of course.
And I love that because that is real music. I mean, for people who love music, I think those uh, labels, of what is classical and what's popular are so superficial, and they don't really matter. And I think to hear your music, to me, it's just music. It's not this or that. And so maybe we could hear something like, so, especially for people who don't know that Brazilian tradition that should be mentioned. You play something that you consider very Brazilian, so we can have an idea and start our life
Yeah,
with Brazil?
with pleasure. Yes, I could play something by Ernesto Nazaré, for example,
Okay.
because he represents this Brazilian piano tradition, as we call. That's the fusion of European dance music, so to speak, to the 19th century with the Afro-Brazilian elements, and it's still modern until our day. So let's play some Nazaré, and
Yes.
let's see what happens.
Wonderful. Knowing you, I know it's not going to be just Nazaré. So I'm really looking forward to that. André Memari and the wonderful Brazilian composer Ernesto Nazaré. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And for people who just came in now, let me just do a little introduction in Portuguese. Para o pessoal que entrou agora e está ouvindo o André MEHMARI, só lembrando que o Renato Brandão Live hoje é em inglês e a gente está falando para um público maior do que só os brasileiros que estão aqui no Japão. Mas, por favor, continue assistindo, porque vocês vão curtir também muito a música, que é essa linguagem universal. Olha, o pessoal já está participando bastante aqui. Mônica Ribeiro, Sábado com Música, coisa boa. O grande maestro Stephen Morgan, que foi um grande professor meu aqui no Japão também, compositor também, escreveu Transporting Music. Né? So let's go back to, the music of Ernesto Nazaré. So when you mentioned before these Afro-Brazilian rhythms, what comes to my mind is, choro, machixe, all those old words that came before samba. Could you tell us how did that happen? That samba was born from this fusion of, the classical music of Europe and the rhythms from Africa.
It's a very interesting story, and it has a lot to do with my own story, because when my father knew my mother was pregnant, he gave her a piano as a gift. And so I was born at the piano bench. I began being brought to this world at the piano bench of my mother. So we have all these little pianos coming to Brazil the beginning of the 20th century. And people are playing music at home because, of course, back then we didn't have radio, we didn't have the internet, and they had to play reading the score at home. So Ernesto Nazaré was writing this music influenced by the European dances like the waltz or the polka. And then he was making fusions with the music he heard on the streets from the liberated slaves. They were the chorões, the barbeiros. They were playing music by ear. So these popular musicians, street musicians, they listen to the dance music, European dance music, and they play in their own way. So we
are talking about the beginning of the 20th century here, aren't we? That's when Ernesto Nazaré was
even before.
Right.
I think even in the late 19th century. Something like 1870 or 1880. It already was going on in Rio de Janeiro. I'm talking about Rio de Janeiro.
Yes.
And so Nazaré and his contemporaries, they kind of make this blend between streams of music and generate a very, very unique Brazilian piano language that is valid until today. We are all consequences of this fusion.
Mm-hmm. And who would you say, I mean, it's a very difficult question, but who would you say is your biggest influence as a composer? Because you compose as well. And, when I went to your concert, I could hear Villa-Lobos, for example. It was, a very strong presence in your harmony and in your chords. But who would you say is the musician that, you feel like you are a continuation of his or her work?
Renato, I think it's very hard for me to say that, because I have a lot of influence and I have a lot of masters, and I do study a lot since my, also studying music and finding new things. And so it's hard for me to say just one name, but of course, Ernesto Nazaré is the founding father of modern Brazilian instrumental music, so to speak. Along with Xinguinha and along with Anacleto de Medeiros and other of his contemporaries. But I would say that, of course, Villa-Lobos is the greatest classical, so to speak, composer. And Villa-Lobos already did a lot of fusion in his music, as you know. His dream is like one Brazilian music that can welcome everyone. And that's my idea too. Of course, not always this is possible, because in certain environments we have a lot of resistance and of people. They want to give labels to every kind of music, and I don't have this nature, but somebody can have it. Of course, it's possible.
Yes.
But I would mention, two great names like Hermeto Pascoal and Egberto Gismonti. They're both big influences. during my teenager, watching Negiberto playing was for me a decisive moment, when I thought I want to be a musician because I love what this guy is doing. And also
Yes.
Renato Pascoal, his records, I would play along with his records. I have perfect pitch, so I could play, along with records and learn a lot from these two great pillars of Brazil instrumental music.
Yes. I'm a little bit older than you, and I remember those two names very well because this is like when I also was also studying piano. And when I first saw Hermeto Pascoal, I was incredibly impressed because he really is a genius. I mean, he's something out of this world. So for
Mhm.
the listeners and people who are watching us who are not Brazilians, those two names, Egberto Gismonti and Hermeto Pascoal, not so well known outside the classical music circles, more into the jazz circles. I think people know them very, very well in the United States and Europe. But here's a very good thing. So I saw some lives with you where you're talking about, the cancellations, during the pandemic and all that, but
Yeah.
also that as, like a composer would, you use that time on your own in your beautiful studio up there in the mountains just outside São Paulo in Cantareira, in Mariporã. Beautiful area. So what have you been composing and doing? And maybe you can play something that you have composed recently for those of us who follow your work and know that you were not performing for a while because of the pandemic.
Well, as a matter of fact, I just performed with a full orchestra last Sunday, Father's Day. But was the first in 2 years, so it's a lot for
Wonderful.
me. My career has always been very active, traveling. I traveled, more than 30 countries, and of course, Japan is my favorite, and I miss Japan a lot.
Thank you.
I
We
moved
were looking
7
forward
times.
to having you back.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It's the first place I'd like to come back and stay for a while, maybe more than a month, maybe stay and teach Brazilian music. I don't know. I have to figure out a way because I miss Japan a lot. The Japanese people, Japanese is my best audience I found, and the pianos of course they take care of the piano like no one else. I mean, it's
Yes.
really beautiful. The respect for the art and the artist. That's something we
Yes.
don't see in Brazil. We see the opposite in Brazil. We see people attacking arts and artists. In Japan, it's like something is like sacred, and I love because for me, art is sacred too. So we get along very well, and
Good.
yeah, pandemics. I could spend hours talking about it. I released 4 albums last year, so
Hmm.
I'm not stuck. I'm not, I'm not paralyzed. Of course, this is very sad. We had more than 500,000 deaths in Brazil because of the COVID. It's very sad, the reality in Brazil nowadays. But I don't give up my art, my music, because people say to me, Andre, I need your music. Your music makes my life better. So I don't stop. I never stop. Yesterday, I was recording in my studio. I learned how to make, music videos. I purchased cameras and learning new technologies. And we are moving. And I'm composing. I'm composing an opera
Wow.
based on a text of Machado de Assis.
Wonderful. Which
Yeah,
one?
I'm working a lot. I have a brand new album out with my good friend Antonio Loureiro. It's called Matéria de Improviso or Matter of Improvisation. It's already out
By the
on
way,
the.
another thing that's very impressive in your career is your partnerships. I mean, the
Yeah.
incredible list of artists that you work with inside and out is very impressive. I mean, it's really well. I think great minds work
I have
together,
a lot
and you
of. Yeah.
obviously attract people of your caliber.
I love making duets, Renato, because it's no, it's like having a good conversation with a good friend, and I have a lot of good friends, musicians or not,
Mhm.
but I have a lot of duets with singers, with instrumentalists. So I just released this one with Antonio Loureiro. That's very interesting because it's only piano, synthesizers, and drums,
Wow.
and all improvised music, 100% improvised music. And I have a brand new album coming out in September that's called Noturno. That's a
Hmm.
piano solo album where I play from 17th century music from Monteverde in Couperin. until Ernesto
Wow.
Pascoal and my own music in the same project. So this is a very, very accurate self-portrait, because I play very different music from Baroque to jazz.
So we have a lot to look forward to. I'm just making a note in my head of all these names, Noturno, and I'm very, very curious about your opera, because Machado de Assis, again, for the people who are not Brazilian and are watching, Machado de Assis is our greatest writer. He's from the
Yeah.
19th century. He's, called a realist, but he's so much more than that. And what is the story that you chose for your opera?
Oh, I'd like to keep that a secret for now.
Okay, okay.
It's a conto. It's a short story. Machado de
Yes,
Assis was a master of short stories, and
yes.
actually, it's a very unknown short story, because
Wow.
with the help of the great Professor Wisnik, I found this short story that has a lot to do with all the things you're talking about, the music, about the classical or popular, what is high, what's low art. And Machado is a master of, thinking and giving back bright ideas about all the social aspects of early urban Brazil.
Well, I look forward to that, because one of my jobs is teaching Portuguese, and I'm always bringing Machado de Assis to the Japanese young students,
Absolutely.
university students,
Absolutely.
and it would be wonderful to be able to illustrate it with your music. I'm looking forward to that. So yes,
And
but
you know what?
let's.
You know what? Machado de Assis actually met Ernesto Nazaré. There's documents that state that.
Wow, he knew
The
everybody,
two
didn't he? He was
masters,
a
they
very
met.
popular figure in Rio in those days. Rio would have been such a fantastic place in those days, isn't it?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, of course, lots of horrible things happening as well with slavery and all that. But when we think about that fusion, that was being born, in Brazil, the pure Brazilian culture was born with this fusion, wasn't it? And this, especially in the music, in the arts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big melting pot.
Mhm. So could you show us some of your new compositions, like something that you've been working on in the last couple of weeks, and that is, so we can see actually your style, because before you played the Neste Nazaré, so we were listening to some of, other people, but
Okay.
yeah, what would you like to play
Okay.
for us?
I'll play a theme that opens the new album, Noturno. That's called O Tema que não entrou no filme. That means the theme that was not in the movie. That's a funny story, because I write a lot of soundtracks. I compose a lot, and I actually wrote a soundtrack for a TV series back in 2012, and a big TV Globo series, really, really big. And I wrote, of course, a lot of music, and this theme never got used.
Oh,
And then
see.
I was randomly, uh, looking to my old sketchbooks, and I found this theme there, and then I completed in 2021. So 10 years, almost 10 years after, I complete the theme and record it, so I can now play it.
Let's hear it then. The theme that didn't get into the movie by André Memari, played by him. Wonderful. And it's totally the movie's loss that it didn't get into the movie because it's a fantastic theme, very beautiful. And I'm so glad it is in your new album. And how do we get your albums, now with these, new technologies? For example, one way, especially when I want to support, an artist, I buy it through Apple Music. Is it possible to find your albums there and buy it that way? It is
Well,
there everywhere.
I do sell high-resolution versions of my albums at my own website, andremehmari.com.br. This one is already out, actually, in my website. You can purchase with high-resolution audio and also 8 bonus tracks. And, of course, the liner notes in PDF that you never get from the streaming. And so before the streaming, this album is already out at my website. And you can also purchase other titles there. And of course, I do have all my music on streaming, except this one. But you can also find scores and other stuff at my website.
Oh, wonderful. I'm definitely going to check it out. I mean, I can't play as well as that, but I'd love to have a look at the scores and, try a little bit in my little piano here at home. We do have a friend in common I discovered this weekend, and that is Mauricio Busab from Trattore.
Yeah.
And when I told him that I wasn't too, he was very excited because, he says he's followed your career from the beginning and he's very, very proud to have you at Trattore. Trattore, for those who don't know, is a independent music distributor in Brazil, and they have so many and wonderful artists, including today's guest, André MEHMARI. If you have tuned in during this live, this is Renato Brandão live with a very, very honorable guest today, André MEHMARI, and he's a Brazilian composer, pianist, and great living artist. And we are very, very privileged to have him playing and talking with us today. One thing that I was also quite impressed is your rapport with the audiences. Like when you play, you are also talking to people, and people are so responsive. I don't know if it's because, as I said, here in Japan, you're very well received and well loved. And in fact, most people who asked for this live to be in English were actually people here in Japan. At the universities where I teach, they will say, please English, because I love André MEHMARI and I follow his, I've been to his concerts and etc. But is that something you always do? Like when you do a concert, do you always talk to the audience and has this interaction, or was just the one I went to?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, this is quite new for me. I always been very shy. It's like from 10 years, I've been talking to the audience and also making this fully improvised concerts and making improvisations upon themes that the audience suggests. So this is new for me. I'm learning how to communicate better. Of course, different audience have different attitudes, but I've been doing this thing worldwide. So I hope to be back someday to my travels, and because this is so rich, being able to communicate with the audience that's present at that moment. And for me, improvisation is the art of being present
In the
at the
moment.
moment
Yeah.
in time, because of
Yeah.
course I can compose, I can prepare every single note I'm going to play, but improvisation is something else. Is my ability to be present at the time and capture the ambience and the environment and the spirit of the time of the day. And of course the people that's is also giving me their time. They're there listening to my music, and so I think it's just respectful to ask them what you'd like to listen to. And this is so rich for me because I can create like compositions in real time using the themes that people suggest. And I
So
just
maybe that's
love.
something we can do right now, since this is a live. So those of you who are listening to us, and I'd like to say Erika Ishikawa is making wonderful comments here. Natasha Hennersdorf, she's a German friend of mine here in Tokyo. She said bravo. I mean, everybody is very, very impressed, of course. And Ronaldo Fonseca is another musician who, he plays Brazilian music here in Japan. So, here's the invitation. If you'd like to listen to something, make your requests, and maybe we still have a little
Yeah.
bit of time, and Andre can play it. Also,
Yeah.
your questions, if you have any questions for Andre, this is a great opportunity. Sonia says, Andre just said he is shy, but a shy Brazilian would be like an outgoing and talkative Japanese for sure. Yeah, that's a good point, because as the Japanese are very quiet, and that's Sonia
Well,
Susana is she's a Spanish lady, friend of mine who lived in Brazil. She speaks Portuguese fluently and English as well, and Japanese. She's married to a Japanese guy, and she's very, very uh, good at languages, and of course, she loves music as well. What we're going to say about being shy? Yes.
well, I mean, I don't think I know a lot of shy Brazilians, and a lot of Brazilians that don't like soccer, like myself.
Me too.
I mean, I'm a very, atypical Brazilian. But anyway, and I know a lot of Japanese that love parties, and they love to drink sake, and they're.
Yeah, we can't generalize, isn't it? It's always, yeah, I agree with you.
I miss
Um,
some Japanese
Olha,
friends. Yeah.
Erika Ishikawa has a lovely message em português. Foi muito bom conhecê-lo, André. Meu sonho é assisti-lo um dia. Depois da pandemia, vou ficar esperta para quando vier ao Japão. Pode deixar que eu te aviso, Erika, que a gente de repente vai até junto para o show dele, que vai ser um prazer quando você voltar
Obrigado,
aqui
Eric.
para o Japão. So, the most interesting thing too that I think a lot of people don't realize is that probably you never play the same song twice, do you? Because when you are playing in concerts, there is always that element of improvisation, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. At some degree, all my music, the music I play, is open. At, people write me and emails, and I want to buy arrangement from the Beatles song, or for Chega de Saudade. Send me the score, how much, and I say I never wrote a single note of that arrangement.
Wow.
And
And was it
all the music
since
I
the
play.
beginning you were like that? Like you would sit at the piano and just start playing, and that
Yeah,
is
it's very
incredible. I
natural
mean,
for
that
me.
is.
Even when I was reading classical music and being faithful to the score, after doing that, I went to like creating variations or improvisations upon that music. So it's my nature. When I was 8 or 9 years old, I was already doing this, and it's something that I can help. It just happens. And as I said, the music I play is always open. Of course, I write classical music for orchestras or chamber ensembles and classical musicians. Of course, everything is written out in great detail. But for myself, I leave a lot of space for improvisation always.
Well, Maria Miura is also saying, Renato and Andre, I also want to go to the show. I think we're going to be like with a big group next time you're in Japan.
That's
We
great.
carry a banner. from today. But that is the idea. I mean, and I really wanted to make sure that this live was done so that I could introduce you to a lot of Brazilian friends that I have here who didn't know you. And as I said, you're very, the Japanese, as you said, they are music lovers, and they know, everybody who comes to Japan will have a follower. It's incredible. Like, bossa nova, that is, it's not played anymore in Brazil very much, because it's kind of out of fashion. But here you still have the people who are, heavy core bossa nova fans, and they will.
Oh, it's impressive. I have a lot of stories about my trips to Japan. I was seven trips until this day, and I remember a journalist coming to my backstage, to my camarim, and very respectful, and he wanted to make an interview, and then he opened a bag with all 30 CDs I released today.
Yes.
Like all 30. I mean, not even my mother has all my CDs. I mean,
yes.
And this journalist had everything, and he knew everything about every single release. And I was so impressed that I was speechless, because in Brazil I never had that kind of respect.
And I saw you signing CDs too, which is something that also, a lot of people don't buy CDs anymore. But here in Japan, people do buy the CDs, and they want them signed still, which is lovely.
Yeah, after the concert, they make big lines, and then they buy the CDs, and they ask for autograph, and they give me gifts. Sometimes they give me like omiyagis. It's so nice. As I said, it's the best audience I ever had. It's Japanese.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. I'll tell you a story about Japan as well. That I used to work for a Brazilian channel for the Brazilian community here in Japan about 20 years ago, and it was very interesting. And once Ivan Lins came to Japan, for a concert, and we were very lucky. And also Lincoln Saito, who is you met just before, he's doing the technical part of our lives, was with us, and we spent the whole day with Ivan Lins. We took him to shops. We were making shooting and stuff.
Course.
Ivan Lins came to Japan, and that happened to every Brazilian musician that came here. At the time when we still went to CD shops like HMV and those large CD shops with a list of Brazilian music that his friends in Brazil wanted, and they couldn't get in Brazil, because they knew that if you went to a shop in Japan, you would find like vintage Elis Regina CDs.
Absolutely.
And it was just incredible. I had no idea. And then he went home with, I don't know, more than 100 CDs. Like he had this huge list. And that shows you how much the Japanese know and love Brazilian music. And it's no wonder that they know and love you as well and your music. So
that's absolutely true.
Yeah, Stephen Morgan says your music has a unique lyric melodic quality. Have you written any songs? That's a question
a
from
lot of songs.
Mm-hmm.
I love the Brazilian song tradition, and of course, not only, but yes, I write a lot of songs. I have like 100 songs, and I released a double CD. Actually, in Japan, was the special edition that's called Canteiro, and this was released in 2011. Was a very sad year for Japan, as you know, that tsunami, and I made a tour in Japan that year, just 2 months after the tsunami. So it was a very deep moment for all of us.
Yes.
And Japan was beginning to recover. And then I went to Japan twice that year. I came back in November, and it was already a new country. It was unbelievable. But yes, I do write a lot of songs. I have a lot of lyricists, partners. And this double CD is called Canteiro, Canteiro, and it's available on streaming.
Wonderful. Canteiro would translate as, flower bed, something like that, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, but also is related to canto, that's a singing quality.
Wonderful.
Canteiro would be like
play with words.
Yeah, like a song.
Cantar, of course. Yes.
Yeah,
wonderful.
So this is the play with words.
Yes, and Del Porto is saying, I want to see a show of André with Breno Ruiz, who is a great friend in common. So there you go.
Absolutely. Breno is a good friend. Actually, yesterday we were recording a song of his at my studio with Monica Salmazo, the great Monica Salmazo, great singer.
Wonderful. Well, people are not requesting anything, so I'm going to make a request, and I want to hear one more of your songs. But you mentioned Egberto Gismonti, and maybe we could hear something, like of Gismonti, because that is, the album Palhaço that he released when I was a teenager. So that we're talking about probably early 80s, something like that, is something
Yeah.
that was so close to my heart.
Yeah.
So could we hear some Gismonti and then maybe have that mixed with one of your songs so that Stephen Morgan can also hear one of your songs?
Okay. So yeah, let's play some Gismonte. Let's see.
Thank you very much. André MEHMARI playing the wonderful Gilberto Gismonti and, of course, improvising on top of it. It's just lots of memories. I'm actually quite moved to hear these melodies and these harmonies because it's very close to my heart at the time when I was, waking up to music and to Brazilian culture and all of that. So you can't imagine how much people are loving and sending hearts and commenting here on our lives. It's really, really lovely. And we got a really interesting question from João Carlos Pineapple. He's a Brazilian in Rio de Janeiro. And he says, "Hi, Andrea, I'm a great fan of Keith Jarrett, who is also a great improviser. How do you compare yourself to him, and who has most influenced your improvising techniques?" Very interesting question.
Oh, Jarrett is one of my idols. Of course, he's fantastic. He's great, and I've been listening to his music since I was like 15, 16 years old, and I admire his beautiful sound and his crystal-like sound, and of course his ability to improvise. And he's one of my biggest influence, no doubt. And yeah, he's like Bill Evans, he's one of the greatest jazz pianists, and of course played classical music with his own voice. When we hear him play Shostakovich or Bach, it's always Keith Jarrett, and so beautiful, and it's a big reference for me.
Yeah, wonderful. Yes, I think that improvisation kind of technique is something that it's like talent itself. You either have it or you don't, and obviously you do. And I would say you're up there with him. It's just some so natural, and it just comes out so beautiful every time. It's just well done. Vanessa LM she's like writing a lot of things here. Parabéns, sugoi. You know that word in Japanese means wonderful. And Vanessa, let this be a present for you because I know it's Vanessa's birthday today. So there you go. Parabéns pela live, Renato Brandão. Thank you. Feliz aniversário, Vanessa. Muito bom ter você aqui assistindo a gente e saber que você está curtindo. Bom, você disse que já voltou para os palcos, né? Já fez um concerto domingo passado, Dia dos Pais, com a orquestra. Qual foi a orquestra que você cantou?
Orquestra Sinfônica Heliópolis, aqui do projeto from the Instituto Bacarelli project that's on the favelas of Heliópolis. It's a very, very beautiful project, and they have all the stages of music, teaching from early to the full professional orchestra. And then we play the music of the Clube da Esquina on my own arrangements, as you know, the music of Minas Gerais and
Milton Nascimento, yes.
And also these compositions of mine, and was very, very moving. And we all had to wear masks, of course,
yes,
to protect ourselves and the others. And I also played another concert in Rio de Janeiro at the Sala Cecilia Meirelles with my trio, piano, bass, and
wonderful
drums.
Theater in Rio. If you ever go there, anybody just visit
Cecilia Meirelles Hall. But Renato, I'm used to play like a lot of concerts, and then this is just I wouldn't say I am back already. I have to.
And also, you have been doing a lot of this, haven't you? Like playing on lives, and I watched some of your lives during the pandemic, so it never really stopped. But the reason I'm asking is because my next question is, what are your next tours? I mean, do you have any plans to start touring again overseas, and of course Japan, or anything?
Yeah, I always have plans, but the COVID in Brazil is very heavy, and it was very, very poorly managed by the authorities. And so
I just want to say here that I'm 100% with you. I mean, I follow your page and everything, and we are completely together in this absolute
It's a shame.
outrage with what's happening in our country with our president,
Yeah.
and
Oh.
I really hope that he's out soon.
It's the
Because
worst time in
does.
Brazil. It's the worst time. I've never seen nothing like that. It's just I feel ashamed of being a Brazilian nowadays. I feel very honored to be part of the Brazilian culture, but as a country, I don't identify myself. I don't connect. But it's going to change. It's going to change. I'm absolutely sure
It has to
because it's
change.
so bad.
We've had crisis in the past, and
No,
it's this, I saw Fernanda Torres, the daughter of wonderful Fernanda Montenegro, and
yeah,
she was so full of hope. She said, "Look, we saw similar things happen to the Brazilian arts and the cinema under Collor. You remember that, in the
of course. Yeah,
1980s,
yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And it,
Yeah, yeah.
and then after that, look at all that they did, in the Brazilian cinema, such a renaissance in the
We
20th,
never we
20th century.
resist every time. We won't stop.
Yes,
Brazilian artists
of
were
course.
very stubborn, and
Yeah, this is our country.
we
It's
don't lower our
you and
heads.
artists. Yeah, exactly. But no, but I just wanted to say that, and I also admire a lot your social involvement. Like working with the communities, the favelas in Brazil and all of that. And I've been following that as well. And well done. I think this is means so much to me when I see an artist that is not alienated, I say that he's not really
Well,
disconnected from what's happening in our country, and is also putting his music and his talent into the service of the hope of a better country for the future. Thank you very
it's
much,
not
guys.
easy. I wouldn't say it's easy, but I have to do it. I have to do to be okay with myself. If I would just play and be quiet and watching all these barbaric things, it's not myself. I have to speak. I have to speak out. But last year I had a 2 month tour in the U.S. And I would release my new album there with my trio, and everything was canceled. And now we are slow to come back touring because Brazil has a bad reputation abroad, and
Yes,
people look to Brazilians like it's a threat because is this guy going to bring the latest Corona type? I mean, what is
I
this? I mean,
know.
I'm paying for the stupidity of the leaders. That's so sad.
Yes, exactly. I totally agree, and I think I can't wait until some light comes into Brazilian people and they can elect somebody a little bit more serious and that can be respected again by everyone. But we are we still have about 8 minutes, so may I ask you, maybe can we have some Milton Nascimento then, since you were playing Clube da Esquina, because this is another of those sounds that every Brazilian who lives abroad, the moment we hear the voice of Milton Nascimento, the melodies of Milton Nascimento, we cry, because it is something so quintessentially Brazilian, isn't it? And so different from that
Absolutely.
tradition we talked about before of Rio and machixe and samba. It's something really, a root of Brazilian music from Minas Gerais, this, inland state that is,
Yeah.
so beautiful.
Okay, let's
So
listen to some songs by Milton Nascimento. Let's see what I can play. Uh, hmm, what can I do? Let's see.
wonderful São Vicente de Milton Nascimento no piano maravilhoso de André MEHMARI. Puxa, que maravilha, que quantas saudades também, né, que esses sons trazem para a gente numa época, né, de tanta esperança, né, que a gente estava saindo daquela ditadura, né, nos anos 70, 80, e esses arsenal de artistas maravilhosos que ainda estão vivos, né, a maioria deles, como Milton Nascimento, Chico Buarque, Tom Jobim, né, que já se foi, mas assim, essa alma, né, brasileira que está sempre tão representada na música e que é reconhecida no mundo inteiro, né? Felizmente a gente tem esse consolo, né, de que apesar, né, aqui é muita gente concordando com você a respeito do país, a Mônica falou, Mônica Ribeiro, enquanto tivermos pessoas como o André, teremos esperança. And she wrote in English as well, hopefully all this horror will be gone and we'll be reminded as a wonderful and rich cultural country. And I'm sure we will, Monica, because that is, that is something that nobody can take away from us. As much as they try, and they try to cut the funds for the arts, it's so ridiculous, when you see that, exactly neglecting our richest treasure, and also racism, all those things that, but, it's not just in Brazil. I think we have this, kind of strange, wave, and I'm sure that Stephen Morgan, who is watching us from the US, he will feel exactly the same about his own country, because, they had, 75 million people voting for someone very similar to the one we have in Brazil now, with the same kind of, narrow mentality and wanting to exclude instead of including, which is completely not, doesn't go well with the arts, does it, Andre?
It doesn't go well with anything, I would say. If you like,
Yes.
if you like the human being and you are not racist. I mean, this is not an option to be a racist.
Exactly.
I mean, this is not a personal choice. I mean, or you're a good person or you're a bad person. This is not good. This is not a choice. I mean, and in Brazil, with all this story and of horror, and I mean, we are going backwards, very, very quickly as a society, and this is very upsetting and very, for me, that I love my country so much, is hurting real bad, because this is not the country I dreamt, and this is not the country that is in the art. It's in Brazilian culture is so inclusive. Can the music of the Clube da Esquina, for example, you can find traces of pop, jazz, avant-garde, classical, regional, folklore, and everything is there, and everything is welcome.
Africa, Europe, exactly.
Yeah, and this is us. This is our miscegenation, our culture.
Yeah. That's the real Brazil.
I mean, there's no such thing as a pure Brazilian. There's no such thing. We are all daughters and sons. I mean, my grandfather came from Syria, and from my mother's side, from Italy and Portugal. What am I? I am I'm this mixture. I'm this is a new country.
Exactly.
But
that's so refreshing to hear that, and it's wonderful. And unfortunately, it's already 1 hour. It's 10 o'clock now, so unfortunately we have to finish. I'd like to thank everybody who came in to this wonderful live and this opportunity to listen to the André MEHMARI. But above all, I'd like to thank from my heart your participation, André MEHMARI. You have really lifted my profile by being a guest in Renato Brandão Live. It's a real honor and a pleasure for us. And I look forward to having you again sometime in the future. And vou me despedir também em português, das pessoas que os brasileiros que ficaram com a gente durante esse tempo, apesar da live ser em inglês. Peço desculpas, mas eu quis realmente ampliar e também para incluir várias pessoas que conhecem o André MEHMARI, mas não falam português, né? A linguagem da música é a linguagem universal e eu tenho certeza que vocês curtiram mesmo quem não fala inglês hoje. André, thank you very much. Muito obrigado de coração. Ok, uma ótima semana e um ótimo futuro para você, né? De muitas viagens. E eu tenho certeza que a gente vai ver você aqui no Japão logo, logo. E eu vou estar lá, com certeza, prestigiando você e levar um monte de brasileiros comigo.
Muito obrigado, Renato. Um ótimo futuro para todos nós. A big and brighter future for all of us. Thank you very much. Domo arigato. And it was a real pleasure being here with you today.
Okay. Yes, and I hope we can go a little bit over. So why don't we finish with you playing, and then whenever Lincoln feels we don't have any more time, he will fade it out. But let's finish listening to a bit more of this wonderful piano. Thank you, André. De coração, muito obrigado.
Thank you.
Até a
See you
próxima.
next time.
Obrigado, André.
Okay.
Muito obrigado. Vamos terminar aqui. Foi um prazer ter esse chorinho aí de 3 minutos. We had a few extra minutes with André MEHMARI, but now it's time to say goodbye. Renato Brandão Live will be back next Saturday. And all the best for you. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.